Welcome to Sustainability Now, technologies and paradigms to shape a world that works. Designed for everyone interested in responsible stewardship of the planet, covering topics related to food, energy, housing, water, waste, health, economics, and consciousness. Welcome to your community, Sustainability Now, with your host, Scott Billy.
Welcome everybody to Sustainability Now. I'm Scott Billy. Today I'll be your host, and glad to be joined by Karin La Greca and Violet Reed from MEVO, the Mawah Environmental Volunteers Organization. Well, we're ready to learn about some of the efforts up there in northern New Jersey and their programs to teach young people how to run a regenerative farm. So welcome.
Hello, thanks for having us. So happy to be here.
Great. Yeah, I think I would like to start with Karin. If you could give a little bit of a background as far as how this whole organization got started. I guess a little bit before that, a little touch on how you got started in environmental and sustainability issues would be a nice little kickoff for us.
Okay. Well, first of all, I grew up that way, pretty much. So it was ingrained in me to begin with. I didn't really know there was a name for it. It's just the way, the lifestyle that we lived, to an extent, not, to an extent. But anyway, so then I joined the Environmental Commission in Mawah because I wanted to get involved, in the town when I moved in there 30 something years ago. So I joined, and I learned and I met people and things just progressed, and we did education and we started doing actions, and it was really fun. Like, I loved it. So that's really, then I started to go to college, to Rampo College for an environmental studies undergrad, which then led right into a sustainability degree, a master's degree. So that was really my timeline in a nutshell, on how I got involved with the theme of environmental studies and sustainability.
Cool. And you're teaching at Rampo College now too, right?
I do. I teach at Rampo College. I teach world sustainability and sustainable communities every now and then when that professor goes on sabbatical.
That's great. It must be a lot of fun.
Yeah. I love it. I love it. I do. Yeah. And I teach K through 12. Also for Rampo College, we have an environmental science center. So when the class trips start up again this spring, we're going to be really busy. So I do that as well. So yeah, so I'm all in.
Great. So then maybe you could touch on how the first cleanup got started that really kicked off the whole MEVO organization.
Yeah, so because I was on the Environmental Commission in Mawah, a young 16-year-old high school student sent a letter to the Environmental Commission asking for help from someone to get some cleanups organized for them or to help them along. So I took the letter and I contacted that student because why not, a high school student that wants to clean up your town and get involved. Yes, I'll take that number. And we just got started, and I called around to a lot of my friends that were involved in, the first big cleanup, what we just did in Mawah, picking up cans and bottles, and then I called my friend that was involved with the Skylands Botanical Gardens in Ringwood. And they, have lots of work to do. And I'm like, do you need 50 kids Saturday morning? She's like, yes, I do. So that was, how that got started. And then connections were made, obviously. And we just started little by little like that. We did tree plantings in the township of Mawah. We planted some evergreens in one of the parks. So it kind of evolved from picking up litter to doing a project, Project Porch Light, which I don't know if anyone remembers that back in the day. They were giving out free LED lights if you took out your incandescent lights. So we went door to door doing that program, for a while. So it kind of just evolved into all kind of actions, sustainable actions. And then obviously, it led into more cleanups and then wanting to grow food and wanting to donate food. And here we are.
Great. So that's a pretty big jump from, organizing litter collection to starting a farm, right?
Yes. And there's lots along the way. I mean, I don't even think I could remember everything that we've done along the way. I mean, it was a very, I was looking at pictures, and that's why I remembered the tree planting for the township. I was like, oh yeah, that's right. Those trees now, you go there now, they're huge. These evergreens are huge, but they were little tiny trees, when we planted them, probably in 2010, maybe, or 11, I don't even remember.
Great. And then there was a really big cleanup project that you all were involved in too, right?
Yeah, so then we somehow, and I don't even remember exactly how we started with Stag Hill. Is that what you mean?
Right, the Stag Hill project.
I think the founder, Eric, the 16-year-olds, somehow he connected with them. And we used to partner with them. We didn't have an office, which obviously we still don't, but we used to use their community center as an office, and we would, help them to renovate and do things that they needed. That's kind of how it started. And then we noticed all the trash, illegal dumping, and all over their land, Ramapo, Lenape lands, Mawah land, state land, county land. So we started to do cleanups up there. Yeah.
Great. Can you explain what Stag Hill is?
Yeah, Stag Hill is an area in Mawah, on Mountainside Road. And it's all forest land. I mean, there are residents up there, but the Ramapo Lenapes have lived up there for, forever. I don't know the exact dates, but maybe Violet can help me more with details. I don't know. But anyway, so the Ramapo Lenapes and Native Americans, that's their home up there. And it's forest land. It should be, I mean, besides their land, the other land, it's public land. It should be able to be hiking trails and things like that, so, but it has become an illegal dumping site for 60 years. So MEVO has been up there for 10 years, cleaning up the litter.
A little more, and if I can just add some context too, the
Yeah.
Ramapo Lenape have lived up there for a few hundred years. So when settlers first came through, they were living more in the valley of that area. But then they were only given really a few options, kill, be enslaved, or flee. So they fled up into the mountains and the Ramapo Mountains, which is what Stag Hill is part of. And there's 3 tribes in the area, or 3 clans. One clan lives in Stag Hill, and then the other 2 live in neighboring towns. Each town is dealing with their own kind of environmental pollution issues. The clan that lives in Stag Hill, Mawah, is dealing with this profuse illegal dumping, which really goes pretty much hand in hand with like environmental racism. So these people on the mountain, there's a lot of stigma around them, lessening now, but has been around profusely for a few decades. There's a pretty derogatory name that they're called in the area. We're New Jersey, which is a book of New Jersey lore, has written up a 4-page spread on them. A lot of it is just, untrue. But because of that, there's this perpetuating stereotype. And so when people don't want to pay for disposing of their contractor waste, sometimes their millings, their shingles, their tires, illegal car rings, people who steal and gut things for parts, instead of going to the proper facility to dispose of these materials, because it can be very expensive, they're dumping it in these forests on the Ramapo land, pretty much saying that they are trash by dumping their trash on there. And something else to note is that these forests are preserved, a lot of it underneath the Highlands Act in New Jersey. In New Jersey, 1 in 7 people get their water from the Highlands. Mawah's wells are somewhere, I believe, near the bottom of this mountain. So water that's running down this mountain into the wells, going right through a lot of trash. I mean, not a lot of it is toxic by nature, but there is toxicity in these millings and these shilling piles. So it's not just like a Ramapo and Lenape issue; it's a town-wide issue as well.
Definitely.
And you all have been up there for 10 years now, organizing cleanups over and over again. And how much actual trash has been removed so far?
It's hard to keep great statistics, but it's definitely, I'd say this is a conservative estimate, about 500,000 tons of
Mhm.
trash and counting. So every cleanup, we probably are able to fill at least a 30 cubic yard dumpster, one of trash, maybe then another full of tires, just depends on the site we're at. And we've done probably around 200 cleanups at this point.
Right. That's a great amount of work that you all are doing up there.
Yeah. Yeah,
So-
it's really been remarkable, actually. You know, it's remarkable to see the people that come out also to do this work, the
Mhm.
volunteers, you know, that come out and want to help and want to clean up. So, because really without the volunteers, right, we wouldn't have gotten so much done, obviously.
Yeah, definitely. And all of this from a single letter from a 16-year-old high school student. What was it, 12 or 13 years ago now at this point?
2008, I believe.
Okay. Yeah, so 14 years ago.
Actually, it's 2008 when we formed MEVO. It probably was before that because it was just like, let's go do some cleanups. We weren't an organization yet.
Mhm.
So,
Yeah. So for anybody out there who's listening and thinking that they can't make a difference, you know, you got to take a step forward to start making a difference, and you never know where it's going to lead. And this is a prime example of that. You know, one
yeah.
person wanting to get involved and one person taking the time to listen to them, and it's just growing and growing from there.
And what I could say is that, you know, and we didn't have any money. It's not like we had all this funding to go do things, right? It was just hands-on, you know, let's gather a lot of people together and let's do it, you know? And so there wasn't, so a lot of people say, well, you know, I'm only one person, or I don't have any money to start anything. And it's not true. You can do a lot.
Right. Definitely.
Definitely.
Little sweat equity. Well, speaking of
Yes.
money, you know, you mentioned, you know, tons and tons of trash being removed from these areas. How are you covering the tipping fees when you take it to get it disposed of properly?
Well, we work with the Mawah DPW,
Okay.
and they bring the dumpsters and dispose of things the way they're supposed to be disposed of. Violet might have more information on that.
Yeah, Karen's exactly right. So what's interesting about Stag Hill is that some of it's County of Mawah land, some of it's Hilburn, and Hilburn's actually the state over. So we're right in a New York, New Jersey line. So sometimes if we're removing trash from Hilburn, which we kind of shy away from because it gets a little bit difficult to get the trash out, you know, we may have to go through a private dumpster company, or the town of Mawah will still graciously take it depending on how we take out the trash, if it's like over state lines.
Mhm.
Then the County of Bergen, they have what's called mini grants, like clean community mini grants. So we actually get a few $100s. It's been increasing over the years with inflation for every cleanup. So after the end of a cleanup season, I'll just fill out a small form, send some photos, and then yeah, they'll give us some funding, which is great because it covers the cost of you know, just programming the events, having staff, if we need to buy any supplies, if we, for some reason, do need to purchase a dumpster. So a little bit goes a long way in that case.
Great. But for
Sometimes
the,
we give lunch to the volunteers.
nice.
Yeah, sometimes, you know, so.
Yeah. So for the most part, the municipal government is covering the disposal fee of what you're pulling out, which is great, because without that partnership, it would be almost
yeah.
impossible.
Yeah,
That's a
Mawah
then kill
DPW.
yourself and pay for it.
Yeah. They've
Yeah,
been very,
a lot.
very, very vital in the cleanups. And
Mhm.
the Mawah DPW is awesome.
Right.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah. So getting involved in your local green team or whatever to meet the people in your local government, that is a great step in the right direction for people wanting to get started and making a difference. You know, you gotta know people to help make these things happen.
Yeah, and most administrations, they really do want to, you know, make their town better. You
Mhm.
know, it's just sometimes there's no one taking the initiative, or, you know, everyone's overworked, or there's not enough staff. So you know, that's where we come in, right? You know, we bring the volunteers, we organize everything, and then they're happy to help us dispose of things the right way. Because you know, what's the point of cleaning everything up if we're not disposing of things the correct way, right? So
So after all of these cleanups, then can you explain or tell a little bit about how it moved from cleanups to setting up a regenerative farm?
you know, like I said, we got property in the beginning behind Bergen Community College. But however, that was a brown field. So we couldn't grow in the soil. So we grew in containers, in milk crates, pretty much. And then, and that was just kind of like, oh, let's grow some food. Okay, next. And, and we had bees also back there as well. And we donated all the food to hunger organizations because at that time it was just all volunteer based. So again, we didn't need a lot of funding or anything because it was just all volunteer. And then what, Violet, the founder went to college because by now he was, he went to college and he went to mostly NYU, and then he studied social change and sustainability and social change, I believe. So he started working with City Green and farming on rooftops in the city and doing whatever they do in the city and learning all of this stuff. And then he came back and wanted, farmland. So he started meeting with Bergen County representatives to try to find property. And that's how we found this land that Fresh Roots Farm is now located on. And then we started again with volunteers, digging up an acre of grass to make a farm. It was lots of hard sweat equity, as you said, with volunteers, and it just happened. I mean, it was just like a lot of hard work and amazing people. And Violet, maybe you could take it from here, because then Violet became an intern with us at the time, and then so she was, involved in more of the building.
So Violet, you came on right as the farm was starting?
I came about maybe like a year and maybe 2 years right after. So there were still parts of the farm that were being developed, but no, I wasn't there for like breaking ground. I was there for like the freshness of the beginning of the farm. But when I came in, it was our first year growing food to sell. So before that, we were still establishing ourselves, and we were donating a lot of our produce, and not all of our farm field had been built, etc.
So you were part of an intern program. Can you describe how that program works? And when you came in, what did they have you doing?
Sure. So our intern program actually started as early as 2012, and Eric was running it, and other MEVO staff members were running it out of the Bergen County Community College Garden, which was our small garden that was on a brownfield. And, the program started from there, and they were tending the garden and helping facilitate donations. But then when it was my turn, when it was my summer, I was working on our Fresh Roots farm mainly, and I was working in a crew of, I think, 5 or 6 other interns, college age, and we were helping to build and maintain the farm. So there were still some areas of the farm that still had to be built bedwise, some infrastructure that needed some final adjustments. And I spent my summer really learning about how you could find land, build it, run it in a not-for-profit setting, how to grow and harvest produce, really how to work with volunteers. So volunteer management was a huge part of it. We had 3 volunteer days a week, open volunteer days. So as the summer progressed, myself and my internship crew were capable enough to run the volunteer day, give out work tasks, oversee them, tell them about our mission, give them a farm tour. And then on top of that, we are an environmental organization. So my two first weeks of the internship were spent in training. So learning about, different environmental leaders in the area, different environmental issues, different things that people are doing to address that issue, hearing from farmers, from policymakers, from activists, from college professors like Karin and her peers, and then learning things that like leadership, volunteer management, public speaking, going on trips to different farms and environmental centers. And then finally, another large component of my summer is trips. So we've kind of tampered it down since, but we took 3 trips during my summer. Since I was on a farm crew, we went to different farms. We went to Massachusetts and Vermont, Connecticut, Rhode Island, New York. So we were all over just working and learning. So all of our trips were workation, a little bit of fun, but a lot of being exposed to new experiences and really just getting empowered and getting those hard hand skills as well.
Great. And is the farm all organic and regenerative farming practices?
Yeah, we call ourselves Beyond Organic, but we are not organic certified. We just haven't gone through the process. Right. But we do everything, by the books organic. The only things we're really using on our fields are amendments like biochar or rock dust or kelp, fish emulsion, things like that. If we have pests, we will spray with like a little bit of Dr. Bronner soap diluted in a backpack sprayer or use diatomaceous earth. But that is truly the extent of the inputs we're putting onto our field besides a copious amount of compost. The way our farm fields are designed, because we have 2 farms. So we have one that's on county land and another acre that's in someone's backyard, is in a system of berms and swales. So berms being those raised beds, and then swales that were dug in between those beds to form the bed. So the dirt that we dug up from the trenches of those swales became our berms or raised beds. And we fill those swales back with wood chips that help us absorb water. We live in, New Jersey, which increasingly has become very rainy in the summer and the fall, and then sometimes midsummer, no rain at all. So how can we make our farm fields a little bit more resilient and not rely on a well? It's through this berm and swale system. In addition, there are also many benefits, but that's one way we're trying to be more regenerative. So we really don't use that much water at our farm field. We do irrigate to start off our crops, those baby seedlings that don't have a root system, who can't tap into those swales. The wood chips in the swales are absorbing water for us that our plants can tap into when they need it. So we've had some really, really big rainstorms, tropical rainstorms, hurricane-like conditions, increasingly a lot in August, moving through September, early October. We have not once had any issues with our farm field flooding, with too much water, with crop failure because of these large storms, which is really, it's incredible. And I know that it is because of these swale systems. We dug them largely by hand with volunteers. So as our volunteers were working, they were also, learning about the benefits of these small scale farms that are built with the land with regenerative practices in mind.
That's great. And so that's an example of, the education system that you have there. And I guess it's a great segue to get into, what are the different programs that are offered out on the farm to teach people.
Can I just back up for 1 second? I'm sorry.
Yeah, go ahead.
I just want to, because when you asked, about the beginning of the farm, so those swales and the design of the farm is very unusual. It's curved. It's not linear the way you anticipate a farm to look. And that was designed for not only runoff and erosion, losing soil, but obviously for collecting water. And who designed that were these 2 young boys, brothers, who at that time, I don't know, maybe are they Eric's age?
Yeah,
Probably,
they're like
maybe around, they were, in their early 20s, I guess, right? Or even younger, maybe, or they were in college. So
early
whatever,
20s.
yeah. And they are the ones that designed that whole field to save the water and save the runoff and erosion and all that, because the farm is on a slope.
Okay. It's a key line, right? Is that what they call that?
Yep. So basically, yeah, we were following the contour line of the land. So it was built using an A-frame level. So there's like 2 pieces of wood, a weight hanging in the middle, and where that weight was swinging was where we mapped out our bed lines. So if you're looking at the farm field from like a drone perspective, it just looks like all over. The beds are squiggly. We have 10-foot beds and then 100 and 12-foot beds. It's just what the land wanted. And so that also was they're permaculturists, or they still are. So permanent agriculture, at its base form, it talks about working with your living systems to mimic the environment around you. And that's what they were thinking when they were building these beds.
And that's huge with, conventional farming and the runoff, beyond the fact that your topsoil is leaving your property, it's winding up going into the streams and feeding into the larger bodies of water and causing algae blooms because of the fertilizers and other things that they're using. So the permaculture practices, keep the water here and use it instead of having to pump other water onto the ground after you've let the first rainwaters wash away.
Absolutely.
Really simple.
Yeah.
Simple concepts, really, if you think about it, but.
And before I talk about the education programs, just one more thing is that we are low till too, low or almost no till. So trying to, really just not disturb the soil, keep the living systems, the fungi, the bacteria, the insect life, not pulling out crops unless we absolutely have to, we're harvesting them. But long-term crops like our kale, our peppers, our tomatoes, we'll just cut them right at the base. As best we can and let the root system just decompose within the soil, because every time you pull a plant out from the ground, you're releasing carbon, because these plants are acting as carbon sinks for us. So that's just another way we're trying to hone in on our regenerative practices.
That's great. Not to mention all the different mycelium and everything else that's happening in the soil there. It's helping your plants, and if you tear it out and throw it in the compost pile, you have to start over again.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And it's easier, right?
Definitely.
Yeah.
So then, let's back to the education programs. So out on the farm, if people wanted to come out and get involved, I know you've got your volunteer Sundays, right? As sort of an open volunteer day. But beyond that, you've got some more structured educational content as well.
Yeah, we're always evolving and changing. It depends what staff members are around and who is able to teach what. But typically we run workshops for adults, and that could range anywhere from like a wild food walk. So right now, as we're heading into early spring, we have a lot of amazing wild edible plants coming up: field garlic, purple dead nettle, chickweed, violet leaves. And these are all things that people don't know. They're all around them that they can eat, make into a wild salad, a pesto, use as a pot herb. So we'll run workshops on that. And as the season progresses, different plants pop up that we can, to talk about in workshops. We call them like wild food walks or foraging walks, but we also will do workshops on gardening, how to plan your fall garden, how to really preserve the harvest. So in gardening, you often get a huge flush at once. How do you, preserve some for leaner times and make the most out of your harvest? And then for little kids, we'll do what's called Seeds and Sprouts. So that's an elementary series for young ones, ages 6 through 10. And they're learning very basics, like how to start a seed. What does a plant need to grow? We talk about compost in one of them. We go visit our beehives, just giving them a lot of different touch points to environmentalism through a very tangible sphere. So the farm, where they can touch things, smell things, get their hands dirty. And then, of course, we have our internships, which are more for college age students. So those are really highly thought out, detailed programs, spring, summer, and fall, where we are immersing college stage, or maybe a little bit right outside of college age students, into the world of organic regenerative farming that's operating on this community model. So bringing in volunteers to get the work done. What does it look like to have a truly community-based project? So in that way, we're trying to engage everyone, from K up through as old as, can be.
That's great. It must be really rewarding to get kids out of the classroom and into the real world, so to speak, and watch them, investigating and learning about the world by getting hands-on experience with this stuff.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I think, on the days when, we feel burnt out or a little tired, or we're just kind of in the muck of spring planting, being able to take a step back and work with the young kids, or even with school groups who come, is really refreshing, because for them, everything's new and amazing and exciting. And you can see it through their eyes, and that's really rewarding.
Right. Yeah, that's cool.
And it's very needed, because people don't know where their food comes from, and kids, adults don't, but, so if we could teach the youngsters,
Mm-hmm.
plant a seed in their head, right?
So
Yeah. So
you mentioned, as you were talking about your foraging experiences, I just have to put a plug in for purple dead nettle, because I cured my seasonal allergies with it a couple of years ago.
Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yep, it popped up all over my yard. Like, I've seen it before, and it always catches my eye, because it's like, some little purple things growing in yards all over the place. And I've looked it up, and it said that you can turn it into a tea or a tincture, and it's a cure for seasonal allergies. So I decided to give it a try. And at that year, it showed itself to me like it wanted to be noticed. Like, it covered my backyard. It never has been there before. So I'm like, all right, let me check this out. And I picked a whole grocery bag full of it and made a giant pot of like a gallon of really strong tea, and then made some tincture from it to keep it past the normal, the first batch. And yeah, after a week or so. No more sniffles, no more itchy eyes.
That's great. See, it was telling you you needed it. It was
Yeah,
talking
exactly.
to you, that plant. It came to you. Yeah, I believe that. Yeah.
That's amazing. Yeah, I actually didn't know that use for it. So that's really, really great to hear. I'll have to look more into it.
Yeah.
Definitely a word of caution. If you're going to forage for it on property you don't own, make sure that they're not using a lawn service.
Oh, yeah.
Because
Sure.
you never know what other people's properties, how they're being treated.
Yeah.
No.
Exactly.
Cool. So, you've got your educational program, started to get us back on track here. If people want to get involved, like how do they reach out?
Yeah, so our website, we have a few different ways where you can get involved and sign up through forms. If you're interested in volunteering, you're in the area, you can click on our volunteer tabs, just right at the top of our homepage. And not yet, but in a few, actually, by the time you're watching this, we'll have a bunch of volunteer events up. So we'll be running Sunday volunteer days pretty much every Sunday from the first week of April all the way until mid-November or early December. It's a bit touch and go depending on what the weather wants to do that time of year. And we'll have morning and afternoon shifts. They'll be at either one of our farms, both in Mawah, and you can sign up right online, and then we'll send you an email the night before the event. We also run trash cleanups in Stag Hill, so we'll be running a few this spring, and those are on Saturdays. And then we'll also be selling our produce at the Ramsey Farmers Market. So if you're just interested in meeting us and seeing our hard work in the form of veggies, we'll be selling our organic produce that was raised by the community, by our interns, by our staff members, every Sunday from 9 to 2, starting in June through November at the market.
Great. And are you running a CSA as well, or is all the produce going to the farm market?
We are running a CSA. Our CSA tends to be a little bit smaller. And so I have people like just today, every day asking, can I sign up for your CSA? Like, how many spots are there? I really think we have like the demand for over 100-person CSA. But we do around a 30-person share currently. Just because it is a bit of work, and we like to be able to give our CSA members a lot of one-on-one time attention, get to know them. And that seems to be a very manageable number for us.
Great. And I imagine with limited space, you've only got so much produce you can grow. So.
Yeah, that too. We're always learning. I mean, we learned all of our farming from like books and YouTube and talking to other farmers. And we're also running, we're running like a not-for-profit with this, production farm. So I think if we were just doing like farming, our capacity would grow, but our attention is also pulled, in other directions, education programs, Stag Hill, internships, etc.
Great. And could you give the web address for your website?
Sure, it's just MEVO.org. There's a camera company by the identical name, but they won't be .org. They'll probably be .com. So if you click on them first, just go the second hit down, and we'll be there.
Great. And we'll have links to all of your resources and your website and everything else on our show notes page for the podcast on our website at sustainabilitynow.global as well.
Awesome.
And I kind of glossed over it earlier, but Violet, you're now the executive director of this organization, right?
Correct. Yeah. So I started as an intern in 2017. I went actually to college for English literature. So I did grow up like Karin, very environmental, composting, parents reading organic magazine, doing a little foraging, things like that. So environmentalism was always within me. I was starting to run different environmental campaigns and projects on my campus of Seton Hall. So I figured, why not look for an environmental internship? I wanted to be outside. So joined MEVO 2017 as a farm crew intern. I never left. I just stuck around. I volunteered. I ran a summer crew. And then our founder, Eric, asked me if I'd be interested in taking over. So I spent probably like 2-ish years learning the job, and just now I feel like I'm coming into my own a little bit. I took over really in January, literally 2 months later, the pandemic hit. So that has flipped our organization on its head a little bit, and just how we do things, where we get our funding from, what our focus is. So it's been great learning to weather that storm and really getting this hands-on experience right away in the not-for-profit world, because this is my first full-time job. So really grateful for such a really meaty experience.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, if you can grow an organization during a pandemic, I think you'll do just fine once we're allowed to get back to real life.
Yeah, that's what I'm hoping.
You did a good job during the pandemic.
Thank you.
Well, What was I gonna say? And if you notice, no one, I mean, none of us, Violet, Eric, anyone were farmers. They didn't go to school for it, so it was all learned on their own. The will, right, to learn through books and master classes and whatever else they did. So, again, that's amazing to me that they wanted, to learn this. And so anyone out there that, you can do it, right? Anyone could learn how to grow food. Maybe you're not going to farm and have everything that Violet's doing, but you can certainly grow food for your family in your backyard.
As the the pandemic has shown us, and different world events can really bring a supply line to its knees. So the ability to support yourself in your own community is, I think, going to become increasingly mandatory as we move forward with
Oh, definitely.
people getting displaced with climate and other issues.
Yeah.
So beyond volunteering, are there other ways that folks can support MEVO?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, I think when people ask that, I typically say, start projects like, ours in your own community. So I didn't mention it before, but our mission is to be the model for scalable ecological solutions that inspire and empower people to take action for a better future. So in pretty much any town you're in, there's going to be some kind of illegal dumping issue or some kind of pollution issue that is, you're able to handle by, just community members. You don't need hazmat, depending. There's always going to be litter to pick up. There's always an empty field or an empty plot or someone who wants to give over their backyard to start farming, whether you grow the food to sell, just to provide nutritious produce to your community, or to donate. Soup kitchens and food pantries often are begging for this produce because all they have are canned goods sometimes to give out to their their clients, really. And we also do trail building, which we didn't talk about too much. There's always some kind of trail conference or some kind of local state park or just county park that could really use hands to help to blaze their trails, maintain their trails, do some trail building. So all of these projects can be done in your own communities. And I think the way to help MEVO and support MEVO is by spreading our mission through your own work that will then become your mission work.
That's great. And a great way to get started with the local farming, if you don't have a backyard or whatever, there are almost always community farms, neighborhood farms, whatever, where people are sharing space and knowledge with each other. It's a great way to get involved and get started. If you feel like it's too overwhelming to try to figure it out on your own, find a group that's doing it in your area.
Or start one.
There you go.
If there's none there, I mean, sometimes it takes someone to start a project like that, but that's a great way. It's a great way. We also have corporate volunteer events. Corporations come out to the farm and volunteer because they want their employees to give back. So we didn't mention that. So any organizations out there that are looking for some team building or just some get outside and get your hands dirty and give back to the community, we welcome them as well.
Great.
Yep.
Yeah.
And do you have any resources that you'd like to share, whether it's books, websites, YouTube channels? Like where do you go for inspiration or education?
Yeah, so we learned through farmers that are called market gardeners. So those are people who are farming on 5 acres or less, using hand tools, growing organically. And so really one of the, key people who helped us grow our farming knowledge and build our farm was J.M. Fortier. And he farms in Quebec. I believe Quebec, and he has a book called The Market Gardener's Handbook, which is a seminal text for anyone who even wants to think about growing on, an acre plot, even half acre, quarter acre, but growing productively or growing for some kind of, just for distribution to have an abundance. So we really learned from him and from his masterclass, but we watched a lot of Curtis Stone, who's called The Urban Farmer. We watched a ton of his videos because he's growing in like a string of people's backyards and growing productively and growing for market. So those two people have been really helpful to us. Elliot Coleman, another big name farmer, organic farmer, market gardener in Maine. And then other resources that we use for farming, we're going to our local organic farming conferences. So on the East Coast, you have the Northeastern Organic Farming Association, and then they have chapters for New York, New Jersey, Maine, Vermont, Massachusetts. And it's really probable that if you're elsewhere, not on the East Coast, that your state has some kind of chapter as well, where there are farmers to connect to, environmentalists to connect to, farms to visit, volunteer opportunities. For volunteer opportunities, we will post our events on a few different websites that have like a ton of great community events, whether it be at other local farms or environmental centers, etc. And those include Volunteer Match, Patagonia, and Patagonia Action Work. So Patagonia has its own environmental activism volunteer page where they really do their best to promote very, very local and environmental volunteer opportunities directly in your area.
Great. And we'll get links to all of that up on the show notes page, like I mentioned before, at sustainabilitynow.global. That's great. Any other things that I should have asked you but didn't, or topics you'd like to touch on before we wrap up?
Yeah, I mean, we are a youth-led organization. We started, by Eric, who was 16, and today we do continue to have youth leadership. So I took over the organization at, I think, 23, I'm 25 now. We're farm managers in our 20s and everyone else. And it's been really rewarding. We're definitely grassroots, I think, because we are youth-led, and that is a beautiful thing to be able to get this hands-on experience right out of college. So if you're a young person watching this, or a young person who has similar environmental or farming inclinations, it's really possible. I think there's this narrative that the older generations, they don't understand the younger generations or support their dreams or their visions. By and large, I found through my experience that I have had the wholehearted support of all older individuals in my life, whether it be corporate groups or people from other not-for-profits giving me mentorship or my board. So as a young person, don't feel disheartened. I really do think the world is actually for you and not against you.
Cool. That's great.
Yeah, and if you want to volunteer, it's such a nice place. And I tell my students, because we do go out off campus to the farm and to some other rain garden and things like that, so they can do hands-on work. But just being out in nature, right, is what we all need. And it is a relaxing, beautiful, quiet time, right? So I always say, when we're pulling out that weed or we're trying to get that big rock out of the ground, right? You're not thinking about anything else. You're just thinking about that action, and it really does release your mind, and it's part of human wellness. So it's just a relaxing place. So just come visit. You'll love it.
A great way to turn off the screen and breathe in some microbiome that you're not normally exposed to out there when you're turning the soil and getting your hands dirty.
Just to get the connection back, because we're so disconnected, most of us, right? Yep. And especially now with COVID and with screen time and being in the house, and just the whole socialization has become limited for lots of people. It's good to just get back and get connected a little bit.
Yeah. So speaking of which, you're full in person now, starting this spring, right?
For me?
No, for the farm.
For the farm.
For all the educational programs and everything.
Yes. Right, Violet?
Yeah, Karen, we don't have a full-time educator, but Karen will be stepping in as our educator for our young our Seasoned Sprouts program, which are ages 6 through 10. So while we are transitioning into new staff, what better than Karen, who's always teaching students through the environmental center at Ramapo, and she's helped out in many times before with educational programs. So really lucky to have Karen help us out with that.
Yeah.
That's great. All right.
My best.
I think you've done a great job, and you've helped to start something that's grown and developed a life of its own. So
it's just amazing when I think back, because you had me thinking back, right? It's just amazing what really one person's idea and passion. I mean, listen, you had to have a lot of passion and energy, and 24/7, like this didn't happen 9 to 5, Monday through Friday. But, and to where it has become now, and with how Violet is moving it in her direction, and it's quite amazing. I mean, I'm amazed every day, and I'm amazed at the young people every single day of, the hard work and the dedication and their thirst for knowledge. So I'm blessed. I mean, if everything ended tomorrow, not that it will, Violet, but if I ended tomorrow, I feel good. I mean, it's been great. It's great.
When you get involved in something that is such a big effort and, a sort of labor of love, you just keep marching forward, and it's really important to stop and take a look back every now and then and give yourself credit for what you have accomplished, because, it gets overwhelming sometimes, and you do have to, to celebrate those little victories when they happen.
Yeah, no, it's been great, and we'll see what 2022 holds. Right?
Good stuff, only.
Yeah, well, we hope to help keep sending people your way.
You should come visit one day. Where do you? You're far away. Where are you? In Philadelphia?
I'm right outside of Philly in South Jersey. Yeah, so probably a couple hours drive, I would imagine.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll have to make it up there once we get a little bit better weather.
Yeah, please. We'll send you home with a lot of veggies.
Yeah.
I like veggies. Great. All right. Well, that I think is going to wrap it up for us here today. So until next time, make sure you keep moving forward and taking those little steps and doing what you can, because together we can shape a world that works.
Definitely.
Thank you for listening to Sustainability Now. Visit sustainabilitynow.global to find resources related to today's program. While you're there, pledge your support by making a contribution to help us shape a world that works. And remember to subscribe, share, and follow us on social media.